Welcome everybody. My name is Quentin Rock with GoEngineer. I'm one of our data management specialists working out of our San Diego office. So thank you for joining us. Today's topic is why should we use PDM and the benefits of PDM. So the agenda today, we're going to just brief overview of PDM, some of the benefits of PDM standard. That includes really the benefits of PDM standard and pro in that section, because professional just builds on top of the standard features. So everything you'll see in the first portion there will be both products. And then we'll review what's available in PDM professional above standard. And from there, talk about some of our offerings that we can help you get started with PDM. And of course, like I said, there'll be some Q&A time. So this is kind of a fun slide here that I put together. Just a typical non-PDM environment is going to have a lot of file management issues. These are all mostly file management related issues. And I'm sure some of you have seen that dialog box that I have a screenshot there where you open up an assembly or you open up a drawing or something that has references and it can't find it. Maybe it's been renamed, maybe somebody moved it, maybe, as you can see in the screenshot, it just happens to be on my desktop and not your desktop. So a lot of those kinds of problems come up without a PDM system managing all the file references and doing the file management for you. So at its core, PDM is basically a great file management tool for SOLIDWORKS and other CAD documents. But for those of you who don't know, PDM stands for Product Data Management. There's a lot of offerings, a lot of different products in PDM category, and obviously we're going to be talking about the SOLIDWORKS PDM product today. This is kind of the marketing slide, so you can see sort of some of the bullet points there. But essentially, it's a way to have a great file management tool, a versioning tool, a revisioning tool, also to have a repeatable process for your stuff, so that when you hire new people, they come in and you just add them into PDM, they can follow the process that's already built. So you're kind of it's not the Wild West of everybody doing their own thing, storing their files in different spots. Everybody is working on the same data. You're collaborating together. There's rules in place to make sure you're not running into missing file references or potentially something getting in the hands of, say, like the manufacturing department before it's supposed to, or the purchasing department before it's supposed to, before it's been approved to go to those areas. So a lot of that elimination of those issues. Also, the kind of the last bullet on here, it really is the best solution for PDM or for SOLIDWORKS because it's designed by SOLIDWORKS. It's built by SOLIDWORKS. It's on the same release cycle as SOLIDWORKS. So when there's a service pack for a SOLIDWORKS version, there's also, any fixes are also included with PDM. Whereas, with outside systems and outside software, sometimes you have to lag a little bit on your upgrades of SOLIDWORKS, waiting for them to have, their product ready to work with the newer versions of SOLIDWORKS. And the tech support team, the people you'll be talking to are the same that you're talking with SOLIDWORKS. So, sometimes it's very hard to tell whether it's a SOLIDWORKS issue or a PDM issue. When with SOLIDWORKS PDM, you don't really have to worry about that because you'll be talking to the same team, the same development team that works on both products. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to get into the actual interface and start taking a look at PDM standard first. Again, everything I'm going to show here is PDM standard and pro in this, but I'll kind of let you know when we're getting to the part where it's only professional. Just a few items here. I like to say PDM, the user interface, is an add-on to Windows Explorer more than an add-in to PDM. It's an add-on to Windows Explorer more than an add-in. So if you've ever used like a Dropbox or a Google Drive or anything that kind of has a sort of a synced folder, in a way it's like that. That's simplifying it a little bit too much, and it's not really like a cloud-based like that. But that's kind of how it appears. So what's really cool about that is Windows Explorer, everybody knows how to use that. We know how to double-click to get into folders. We know how to rename and move files. How do you get files into PDM? Well, it's Windows Explorer. How would you get it into any folder? You just do a file save as, or a drag and drop, or a copy and paste. So the learning curve for clients really isn't that high. Generally speaking, I wouldn't hesitate to even say that it would take a full day to get up to speed as a client. The admins and setting it up might take a little more time, but the training side on the user side isn't very long. because you already know a lot of the interface. So let's go ahead and jump into the interface here. So again, it's kind of an add-on to Windows Explorer. So I have multiple vaults. I'll just be working out of my Acme PDM Pro vault, but essentially it'll look like another folder. Kind of has that PDM icon on there, sort of a blueberry or recycle symbol type icon. I'm double clicking to get in there and it prompts me to log in. So it has some secure logins. With PDM standard, the login system is just built in PDM in the admin tool, which we'll look at in a bit here. And so you would set up users and give them passwords. PDM Professional does allow you to sync with Active Directory, and we'll cover that a little bit later as well. So I'm going to be working as the admin user for most of this demonstration, and that's important to point out because I have full admin permissions, but permissions are a big part of PDM, whether people are allowed to do things and when they're allowed to do things, what they're allowed to see in the vault and what they're not allowed to see. So I'll have full access, but keep that in mind that pretty much anything can be adjusted permissions-wise. So you have a really granular level. I'll show you in a bit when we get into the admin tool, all the checkboxes and all the stuff you can do. But essentially, again, I'm running in a details view. The top half of the PDM here, this is just our standard kind of Windows Explorer view. Obviously, there's some extra pull-down menus and things here, columns. I'm running in a details view to show all the columns. The bottom half is information for what you have selected up top. So you'll notice I'm on this preview tab, and there's other tabs here we'll look at. But it says no file is selected. That's why it's blank. When I go to another tab, they're blank. Nothing is highlighted up top here. So let's just jump in. How do I get through this? Double click again. So I can double click, I can highlight a file, and then I see a preview of it. Now the bottom half starts updating. And of course you can see the eDrawings preview, and this is full eDrawings in there. So even if what's cool about this too is so far I'm not in SOLIDWORKS at all. This is a native SOLIDWORKS file. So if I wasn't I'll talk about licensing toward the end, but if I wasn't a CAD user, there's other types of licenses that, for people that are non-SOLIDWORKS users that need to get into the PDM and still either contribute or just view things that are inside of PDM. So they can use eDrawings to view a lot of this stuff, potentially help also contribute to the workflow. We'll talk about the workflow in a little bit as well. The next tab over is the data card tab. What the data card is basically, this is fully customizable as well. I just so happen to pick some fields and things that I wanted to be able to adjust on here. But essentially, all this data on here is customizable for whatever you want. And you can think of it like a link to the custom properties. In fact, let me see if I can find one. So this is the custom properties in SOLIDWORKS. If I open up this part, it's going to have this weight value. It's going to have, if I went to File Properties, and looked at the Custom Properties tab, I would see that there's a line item for finish and it equals smooth. I also notice up top here, there's different tabs. So the at tab is kind of the custom properties, the top level, but of course in SOLIDWORKS, we could also have configuration specific properties. So if there were differences between, configuration specific, for example, weight might be something that's different between each config, right? Or potentially material. So all these things when we are setting up a PDM vault, we kind of ask you, what are all your, what are the things that you have in your title blocks and your templates and all that stuff? What do you want to be able to track? And in a bit, I'll show searching, because all this stuff is also not only trackable, but searchable. And it's also writable in here. So if I want to access a file, the way you do that, assuming you have the permissions to do that, is you check it out. By the way, I should also mention this. I'm a right-click person when it comes to SOLIDWORKS and stuff, or shortcut. But there is pull-downs for everything. You can see there's buttons up here. Inside of SOLIDWORKS, there's toolbar buttons. There's all kinds of stuff. However you like to use it, it's just like SOLIDWORKS. You can right-click. You can have shortcuts. You can hit the buttons or go to pull-down menu. But I'll just quickly check out this file. And what that means is I'm basically checking it out. So you can see now that checked out column says admin. And what that means is, I have it locked to me. It doesn't mean that nobody else can use the file. They can still open it, but they just won't have right access to it. Only one person can check out a file at a time. That way we're making sure that we're not overwriting each other's stuff. And in assembly, for example, I might not need to check out every file in the assembly to work on it, right? I might only be changing the top level and a few things below it and some drawings. So you can choose what you want to check out and check in. When I go to an assembly and I choose to check it out, you'll notice I get all the references below it. So I could quickly do something like a shift select and select all of them at once, or do a control A, or so I have a choice when I check out things what I want to do. And I'll talk about versioning in a bit here, but just looking over at the version tab, let's go to another project. I think I have one that is a little better here. Yeah, this one. So this I wanted to find one that had a few more versions, but basically you can see that there's 10 out of 10, and what that means is the numerator is what's on my system, the local version here. The denominator is how many available versions are in the vault. And we're not talking about revisions yet, we're just talking about versions. So every time you check out a file, make some changes and check it in, that's a new version. And I'll walk through that in a bit here once we get through the interface. The next tab over is the bill of materials. This is in a way similar to the bill of materials in SOLIDWORKS. It's essentially using the same algorithm, but it's not necessarily the same bill of materials that you would insert a table into your drawing of SOLIDWORKS. If there is a drawing, you can reference it. But what this is the PDM BOMs. So what this means is you'll notice I have a manager BOM and a regular BOM, and those might have just different column sets. So this might just be used, a lot of companies just use this as reference, a quick way to see what's in there. Other companies use this to export to other software, So you might very quickly, let's say I want to open this as a CSV file. That's fine. So it'll open up in Excel, and I can see, and I have some options, but if I was to have this open in Excel, I could set up these columns to match up exactly like where I have to paste it into in another system or import it into another system, or just, do some sorting and advanced stuff inside of this software. So pretty nice. None of this so far, I like to point out that I had to go into SOLIDWORKS to get this info. All of this is now managed in PDM. Once your data's in PDM, there's an SQL database that's managing all this information. The next two tabs over are just the contains and where used. So contains is basically, in a way, it kind of seems like a bill of materials, but it's more of a file management list than a bill of materials, because a bill of materials can have a lot of different things in there. It's more of an engineering list, whereas this is more of a file management list. You can see it's telling me where these files are located, which folders, which versions are used, obviously the name and other things. And and by the way, again, these columns and stuff are customizable. So if there was other properties, these happen to be other properties that I have in my vaults, I can turn on those columns as well. So that's part of setting up PDM, is figuring out all the data that you guys want to track and have in your data, in your vault. Where used is basically just the reverse of contains. So this assembly, where it's used, it happens to be used in this drawing. And you can see it's used in multiple versions of the same drawing. You can check just specific versions, like which version. So version 8 of this assembly happens to be used in version 9 of this drawing. Or you can check multiple stuff. And that pull down for the different versions is available in all these sections too. Like for example, in assembly, you might, the first version may not have all the parts, but the 10th version might, or you may have taken some parts out later on that weren't working and replaced them. So you get that history. And we'll see that when I open some stuff up in SOLIDWORKS and, again, do a little more on versioning. The other stuff is you always get to see who's got the files checked out. So you can notice I have some, these files happen to be checked out by other people, right? So, I can see that when I check out a file, I'm in again as admin. It shows, I'll just check out the assembly, not all the parts below it. It shows that I now have it checked out. So inside of SOLIDWORKS, inside of the interface, it's going to be very easy to tell. Obviously, when I hover over it, it gives you kind of a little presence note there that those can be adjusted. I had some fun with them, as you can tell. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of the basics of the interface. Inside of SOLIDWORKS, there's an add-in also. So once you have it installed, those of you who are SOLIDWORKS users, you'll turn on the SOLIDWORKS PDM add-in and you'll have it over here. It's blank, again, because we don't have anything open right now in SOLIDWORKS. So that's a very quick intro. I'm going to spend a little more time on the task pane in SOLIDWORKS here in just a second, but that's a very quick intro to the user interface. This is where I want to get into the SOLIDWORKS and talk a little about versioning. So let's, again, what versioning is every time you check in that file, it creates a new version. Not every time you hit the save button, but every time you check in. So, that's important. You'll save just as often as you save normally, but when you check in, that's when you're committing a version. When do you want to create a version? Well, that's up to you, but some of the standard things are in a development phase, you may be trying a few different things, and you may want to be able to go back. So you want to have a version, every time you want a line in the sand kind of thing. The other might be collaboration. When I'm done with it, I need to check it in so that other people can see it. Because what happens is I'm only working locally in the in-between versions. Until I check it in, I'm not actually committing it back onto the PDM Vault or the server. And I do have a slide to talk a little bit about the server infrastructure, so we'll get to that. But essentially, that's a good reason. If I'm working on something and it's been a while since I checked it in, maybe I got a red line drawing and it's going to take me 2 weeks to do it, I may also want to check in a few times over those 2 weeks. So just in case a hard drive dies or whatever, we have servers being backed up, and I don't lose my data, or I don't lose any more than maybe a day or two of data. So let's see how versioning actually works. So first things first, with versioning, let me go to my desktop here. I want to bring in some files into PDM, right? So I have a folder here just called random SOLIDWORKS files, and I have this assembly with, I think I put a drawing in here, yeah. So it's just a very basic universal join. It's used in our training classes, or it has been over the years. So how would I get this into the Vault? Well, it can be as simple as copy and paste. Now, I'm not repairing any broken references just by copying and pasting it, right? So there may be some cleanup and things that you need to do. But let's just say I'm going to put it in here. So I just copy and pasted it in. So now it's in my Vault. I can also, inside of SOLIDWORKS, if I had it already open, I could do a file save as, or a file, you'll notice when I go to file open, I can actually browse to the file, open it, and then do a save as into the Vault, or potentially a pack and go into the Vault as well. Drag and drop from another folder or the network or whatever. So looking at our Vault here, I can just browse to it like it's a standard Windows folder, and now I'm in the Vault. So very powerful. You also see like preview and all those things are available inside this file open. So I may not be sure what file is, the right one just based on the part number or the name. And I can click on it and see all the different previews of it and go, okay, oh, that's the right assembly, without having to open it. And maybe it's a large assembly that takes, a few minutes to open. I can just preview it really quick and make sure that's the right one before I actually open it, right? So back in Explorer here, I got the files in here. Now this is where kind of versioning. There's really not a version of these files in the Vault yet. So I haven't actually checked it in. So I'm going to go ahead and check in these files. And I can do it from the top level, or just a shift select, or however I want to do it. If I go from the drawing itself and just choose to check in, it's smart enough because obviously, again, it's made by the SOLIDWORKS people, right? So it knows SOLIDWORKS references. It understands that there are other references in this folder related to this assembly that I'm also trying to check in at the same time. And we'll just, say initial check-in. So it's always good to put in a comment of what you're doing. I'll show you in the history in a little bit what that is. If I'm going to continue to work on it, I can also keep it checked out. But let's pretend I'm just checking it in for the first time here. And now what's happened, now it's actually in the Vault. And I can see the version column here, or the version tab, depending on what I have selected up top. And it'll tell me, I'm equal to the one that's in the Vault. What that means is this is a Vault view. This part in Windows, we call this a Vault view. It's my local cache. It's a view to the Vault. It's kind of the all-in-one thing with PDM. That's why the version tab or this version information is important to know. There's one version available in the Vault. That's the denominator. And the one that I currently have on my system is 1. So that's the numerator. When I go to another project, was it this one? I think I don't have any files. Yeah, you'll notice the denominator is kind of a dash, and it looks like it has it's probably a little hard to see, but it looks like a little disk icon with a question mark on it. And what that's saying is basically if I click on this, there is no local version. So that's very interesting because I can see it right there in Windows. It appears to be there, right? But that's the thing, is I don't have every version of these files on my system. I have one version or no versions of it on my system. When I need this file, I just go file open and it'll automatically cache it for me, or whatever version I choose. So if I click on the preview tab, for example, you'll notice the version tab now says 5 of 5. And if I refresh or click off and click back on up here, now it's equal to 5 of 5. So it automatically pulls this stuff. You really don't have to think about the cache and all that much. I just like to point it out so you're looking at a vault view and you have everything you have permissions and access to see. So back in SOLIDWORKS, let's go ahead and say I need to make a change. I want to create another version of this file. So I would browse to the vault. Again, I think I put it in projects here. It's called a universal joint. And if I need to rename or anything, that's one of the great things here. So, and I'm actually in the open dialog right now, but it's Windows Explorer. I could go back here. But one of the coolest things about this is, let's say, this universal joint I can see here contains this part called yoke female, for example, right? And I can see it right here. Now, if I just want to rename this to, let's say, female yoke, in Windows, if you just change the name of a file in Windows, you broke file references, right? Most of the SOLIDWORKS people in this meeting right now are probably cringing, right? But when I go here, you'll notice that I don't break the references. Notice it's got the new name there. And in fact, if I look at this file and I actually right-click and look at the history of it, I can even see that it was renamed and who did it at what time and day. So all that stuff is tracked. I can rename, I can move, I can do everything. So you might start some parts out and not have the part numbers yet assigned to them, and you just have a descriptive name like this. So you can do that in the vault, and then when you get the part numbers, just quickly go ahead and go through and rename them all to whatever they need to be. So very, very nice functionality there. But anyway, let's go ahead and open this assembly. SOLIDWORKS is going to warn me that I don't have the file checked out. So it's going to prompt me, hey, would you like to check out the assembly? And it notices it does have kind of a little up arrow and sort of blue higher level references too. So it's not just the children, but it's also the parent that I can see in here. And if these parts also had drawings, I could see those in there. But if I'm going to change the assembly, I probably need to change the drawing. And let's just say the bracket part's the one I want to change. Doesn't really matter for this example. So when I check those out, what I've done is I've taken ownership of those files. They're locked to me for write access. The ones that I haven't checked out are read-only. And I'll just expand this out a little bit just so you can see the call-up. If I go to open the drawing, it's right here. That will show as checked out, and then you'll see the assembly and the stuff below that. The way this works, this add-in works, is it's just the information for whatever you have active in the graphics area, whichever part is active. So when I want to, the ones that I have access to, that I have checked out, I can change. So if I hit the save button, it's going to save. Notice it automatically, as soon as I save it, SOLIDWORKS or PDM thinks something has changed. It's been opened, it's been rebuilt and saved. So it's actually starting to show me that this local file is newer than the vault, and I can start seeing this icon. So if both of the two different people had this assembly open, one person changes one part within, I don't know, a minute or so or whatever, you're going to start seeing that, hey, somebody else is doing something to the other parts. Now it shows a dash because I haven't actually checked in those changes yet. I've updated it, I have it checked out, but I haven't checked those in. The ones that are equal to, those are the ones that I don't have access to. Write access. I still have read access. I can still make drawings of them. I can mate to them. I can use them in my parts. Read only is still very powerful, but I don't actually have the full access. So let's go to this file. And what's cool is you'll notice I just right click. There's a lot of the different properties for just this bracket file, but I can also just open that bracket file in its own window. And I have it checked out here, so let's just say we need some more holes in there or something. So I'll just, control drag, let's delete those, control drag the hole a couple times, and now we have, oops, not two of them. Now we have some mounting holes for this bracket that we didn't have before. Obviously, that's poor engineering. I didn't line them up or anything, but so I save. I saved 3 times right there, and I still have just one version in the vault and the dash version, the in-between version on my system. So if I want to check this in, that's when I'm going to create another version. So added holes, let's say, if I could spell. And I have the option to keep it checked out. So if I wanted to continue to make changes, but I want to put this in the vault so that I have a line in the sand again to go back to, or to show other people or whatever, I can do that. There is even an option if you grant permissions to overwrite the version that's there. So if you need to, maybe I did something and I forgot a spelling error in the drawing or something, I just want to overwrite it rather than create a whole new version, I could do that. You know, again, permissions have to be allowed to do that, but I can do that. So I've kept it checked out. I now have version 2. We'll make, you know, another change. Let's just say I added a material to it, and, you know, I don't know, whatever else I might do to it. Again, save as often as I want. It knows that I'm on another version, and go ahead and check this in now. Again, right-click or pull-down buttons. There's even, you know, SOLIDWORKS PDM menus in the right-click out here. You know, however you kind of like to use SOLIDWORKS, whatever your preference is, you'll find a way. So what did I do here? Added material. And this time I'll say I'm done with that. So I checked it in. I no longer have ownership of this file. So I can go back to the assembly. Obviously, the assembly rebuilds or reloads, or the drawing right now, but you know, and that now has a new part. So now the drawing and the assembly have changed. You know, they're no longer version 1. So I'll go ahead and check those in, and I can do that from the drawing, and it recognizes again the references. So say updated to the bracket part, and check that in. So now I actually have that full history of it. You'll notice the bracket has 3 versions of the file. The initial one I checked in, the one with holes in the other one. If I want to see that, I can quickly go to that. If I want to see the earlier version of the assembly, the drawing, without that stuff, I can do that. And it's telling me, hey, when you're going to look at an earlier version, at the time that this version 1 of the drawing was there was version 1 of these parts files. So I have to pull a new version of those to see the earlier version in its true form, and it, you know, does it again, and I can see that now it's back to what it was without those. The other really cool thing is it's pretty obvious over there on the right that I have some older files, right? And it, you know, not just the version column tells me 1 of 3 or 1 of 2, but it highlights it in this sort of pink reddish color. So if I'm working in an assembly and so is someone else, you know, I see, and I open my assembly for the day or whatever, and I see some of these red marks, I know, hey, there's a newer version of the file. And I can very quickly just go and say get latest, again, of the top level, or if it was just 1 file in there, I can just do the get latest on 1 file. Let's just grab everything and we'll go back to the latest version. So again, this is a small assembly. Obviously, you know, if you're pulling a new version of a very large assembly, there's a little bit of reload time. Again, with the bracket part, you know, very quickly, that's a very small part. So just cycling through the different versions here, you know, if I go to version 2, it goes pretty quick. It reloads that. But you get all that history, and that's really what versioning is. So let's go back to the latest of this file, and there we are. Now, the other thing is we talked about those data cards. Those data cards are accessible here. So if I check out this file and make a change to it, and let's just say I'm going to put a finish of, you know, smooth, whatever, anodized, whatever it might be, and I go to File Properties, you'll notice that, you know, it just put this field in as well. And if I call this, you know, smooth 1 and click OK, and I go back to that data card, you know, it's got the smooth 1. So I actually, as a PDM user, you'll probably start using the data cards more than the file properties, because you get a nice menu here. You get radio buttons, you get pull downs, you know, you get different types of things in there that you can set up. Again, this is all customizable. We, you know, would interview you to find out what kind of stuff you want to track. Obviously, common things like revision, description, you know, material, those types of things are pretty common in most companies, but you know, you might have vendor part number or manufacturer, you know, those types of properties. So if I don't need to make a change to this, I can also undo. I don't always have to create a new version. I can just say, oops, I accidentally checked this out. I don't need to create version 4 of this. I just undo the checkout. And of course, I throw away any changes that I did in there. So I'll go ahead and kind of jump back over to here, and the next step is revisioning, and this is where the workflow comes in. This is where the process comes in. So basically everything that I've done so far has been in a workflow. In PDM, as soon as you check in a file and it creates version 1 of that file, it has to go into a state. And these boxes here are states in this image, and at each state we have permissions that we can assign, and the arrows between the states, you can see they're single direction. those arrows are transitions. So the files never sit in the transitions, they sit in the states. And again, at each state we do stuff. So what we try and do is when you're setting up PDM, you kind of look at, okay, how do I start a part? How does it go through a change? How does it get approved? How does it, get obsolete? What has to happen? And then that's where we try and take as much of that and automate it in the system so that you have a process that's repeatable for every file, for everything that you put in PDM. So in PDM standard, you have the workflow. You can have up to 10 states and 2 revision schemes. In PDM professional, you can have unlimited of both of those. And so I'll touch on the differences there. There's more differences, but so let's take a look at the workflow I've set up today. And that's fine. I'm going to open up the administration tool. Now, I don't expect everybody to be an admin, but I want to go into the workflow. So I have a very simple workflow set up for this demonstration. And what that is, again, is work in progress, a review state, pending approval, and then a release state. So we're just saying at Acme, we have a very simple process because you can always expand this. I can always add another state for, say, obsolete or something like that. Really can't spell today. And, and then I can add transitions to get to obsolete and add permissions. What's important is that at each one of these states, you'll notice that there are different groups that I've added in here: admins, engineering, and management. And just to point out, I actually have 4 groups here. Now, these groups are fully customizable again. If you have a doc control group, a quality group, a purchasing group, a management group, all those things, we can create those. And then what you do is, I have my users down here. I just put those people into the groups and take them out. So if somebody new comes to the company, I don't have to set up a whole thing. I create a user, I add them to the right group that they're supposed to be in, and they automatically inherit all the permissions and everything that they are supposed to have. If we look at like engineering, again, we can see the different people that are in the engineering group, but there's also folder level permissions. So if I don't have permissions to even see the folder, it doesn't matter what workflow state it's in, the files inside that folder are in, I'm not going to see them, right? I don't expect, again, you to know what all these things mean exactly, but there's some common ones like checkout, delete, move, those things, see the bill of materials. Those are pretty self-explanatory what those are. There's some that are a little more odd that, if we were setting up PDM or going through training, I'd spend a little more time on. But on top of the folder levels, I can now say, well, I have full access to a folder, for example, and when I'm an engineer, I can see that I have full access or a lot of access to those files in that state called work in progress. But when it comes to pending approval, I might only have read-only access. So when I submit it for a review and the reviewer's looking at it, I made it read-only so that I can't change it while they're looking at it in the background and they're not actually approving the file. If I need to change it, I can quickly reject it back to work in progress and make my changes. Anyway, and each one of these transitions also have permissions. So engineering may be permitted to reject their own stuff or reject files, but when it comes to releasing, only the management team maybe, and then administrators of PDM are allowed to actually do that. The other is, when I look at these groups here, you don't notice I don't have the manufacturing group in there at all. So when files are in work in progress, manufacturing can't see them. When it's in release, though, then manufacturer or viewers or purchasers or somebody can see it. So we're making sure that people aren't opening files and going down to the shop and cutting metal or whatever before they're supposed to, right? They're not allowed to see it until it's a released file. And only the released versions are the ones that they're going to see. The other thing the workflow does really well is we try and automate some of the things that you have to do as part of this workflow. So for example, when I release a file and it goes to the release state or approved state, whatever terminology you use, and by the way, you can very quickly change the name, so don't get caught up that it says release. We can call it whatever you call it. But when I release a file, we rev it. We stamp it as revision A maybe. We also write approved by our initials or approved date. We might have other actions like tasks that need to run. We need to create PDFs and things like that. So in this actual release transition, I have it set so when I release a file, it sets the approved by to the initials of the person. It fills out the property called approved by basically in the file. It also fills out the property for the next revision and increments the revision counter for us. So, these files right now, going back to our vault here, And let's go to our universal joint. So the files in this universal joint folder, they have no revision yet. You can see the revision columns blank, but also highlighting some of these files, I see it says no revision. If I look at the data card, I see there's no revision. So I'll just push them all through. The way you do it is very simple. So as a user, again, the interface and the training is very, very easy. I just right click and say change state. I can actually do that while I'm inside of SOLIDWORKS too. So I have this file open, I can do change state. The key is though, if I have it open in SOLIDWORKS, I can only do it inside of SOLIDWORKS, but I don't have to close it like I just did to come over to Windows and do it. You can do it in either one. So let's say I change the state here. I submit for approval. And like I said, I'll push all the parts through and I can say, ready for review. PDM also has the option for notifications. So I can send somebody a notification. What notification do I want? Say, please review. I can pick the people that I want. I can make it automatic. So a certain group is always done. You can set it up. This is right now I have it as what's called dynamic, where I actually have to pick the user over here, but I could also have it automatically sending those out. So now it goes to pending approval. So now it's in review. And let's say from here, I have what choices, reject or release. Looking back here, I have the one arrow to release or reject. Let's go ahead and change the state. We'll say release the files. Reject will just send it back, just for time's sake. I won't run you through that right now, but approved per ECL 123, whatever we want to put in there, all good. Comment to someone if I want to send them a comment, and click OK. And you notice this transition took a little bit longer because it's actually going through and it's writing in those file properties. So now you see I have a revision A of this file. When I look at the history of this, I can see all the stuff that we did today. When I checked it in, I can see the notes, the comments that I put in there. And you can write a lot more in the comments you can see in there. But generally speaking, you're going to see the first sentence or so, or first half a sentence pretty easily. And then I can see when it was approved. But I can also very easily see that version 3 was stamped as revision A. So if I'm and normally when you're trying to go back to earlier revisions, you really just want to look at the revisions, not all the in-between versions, right? So it's very easy to see which one is A inside the history. And I could go and say, get that one version. And again, if I want to make another change to this, I'll do this very quick. Obviously, there'd be some work. Let's say now I need to make changes. Because in the release state here, this might be read-only. So engineers would, if they need to make a change, it's going to be grayed out here to check it out. Right? That's based on the permissions. We want to make sure it's read-only and release. Nobody changes release parts unless there's a processor or something in there. So let's say an ECO comes along, we need to make a change to this, or ECR, whatever. I have the new release, and that right now I'm going to skip the comments, but and skip the notifications, so it's warning me. And I can make those mandatory that you can't do that. You can't skip them and leave them blank. So you can really do that. The other thing we can make mandatory is these fields in the data card. That maybe we say you have to fill out a description before you can submit it for approval. So if you're commonly getting things submitted to you as an approver that are missing data, you can block the file from even being able to go there until there. And they'll get a warning saying, description can't be blank. So now this is back at work in progress. And, let's say I checked it out, I made some changes. Again, just for time's sake, I'm just going to say, we didn't do that, but open it in SOLIDWORKS and go here this way. And again, if I want to check it out, I certainly could. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to skip that just for now and just open it and run it through. So I ran it through in Windows. Now I want to just show you that you can run it through here as well. You'll notice that there is no local version. Version 4 isn't that. It's no longer in that version. Oops, clicked the wrong button there, sorry. Change state, submit for review. Again, skipping the comments. It's now in pending review, so you'll see the same thing here. Whatever state it's in, you're going to get that information in there. You can do the same actions as if you're a SOLIDWORKS user. And again, I'm in as the admin, so I have the permissions to do this. Not everybody would. I can just quickly say, yes, let's, approved. And, just send something to someone there. And then it goes through, and inside of here, and it's hard to see, I should have pointed that out. It's, you know, Rev A down there, but when it finishes, sorry, I should have zoomed a little bit over, it changed to B there, also B here, also in the file properties, you know, revision B, and so on. So it's doing the revisioning for us, but it's also filling out the approved by and the approved by date and those items. So if I have notes linked to that, when I approve it, it's automatically going to fill out all that stuff for me. So again, that's something we try and do is we look at what you're doing. You know, maybe there's 10 steps or something, and we try and automate as many of those as we can into this PDM system. So nobody's going to be lazy on a Friday afternoon and miss something, right? That's kind of the very basics of the workflow. I'll come back to that when we talk about the PDM Pro stuff here in just a second. Searching. So all this data that we put in is being tracked in PDM. So we can search by just about any field or anything that we put into PDM. Let's go back into our vault. Make this a little bigger for you. And this is a very quick search to just search like current folder or search for a few variables or something. But the complete search gives you a lot more options. I like to say that this search borderlines on a reporting tool in a way. So for example, I can go to that data card and I can search by any of these fields. So, you know, I think I remember I typed in smooth there for one of the properties, and there happens to be, you know, a few of these things that have that field called smooth in there in the vault. And yeah, again, I can, back on this tab, I can pick, you know, certain folders only to search in. You know, you don't have to search the entire vault every time. But the results come very quickly because it's an SQL database. SQL is a very powerful system. It's not going to take very long to do the searches. I can quickly, you know, get out of the search, close it. The other, the reason I say it's kind of almost like a reporting tool in some sense is I can also search by all the files that someone has checked out. So if I want to see all the files checked out by a certain user, I don't know if I have any, yeah, it looks like I have a bunch checked out. I can click on these files. I can go to the preview tab. I can see what the file was. I can look at it. I can check it out from here. I can browse to it from here. So I can, you know, take me over to whatever folder it happens to be in. That. The other is I can check for any versions created between certain dates by a certain user. Or if I'm an approver, every morning I can come in and I can say, show me all the stuff that's pending approval. I can even search by the stuff that I was typing in the comments. So if I remember that I typed something in one of the comments, but I don't remember the name of the file or whatever, I can maybe find it that way. You know, it's a pretty amazing level of searching that you can do in here. So searching is very capable. You know, I won't go through all the different options that you can search, but obviously, you know, it's a very powerful search system. So the SOLIDWORKS PDM, this is kind of a quick matrix of the difference between PDM Standard and Professional. So we'll briefly go through the professional features, the stuff that, you know, you might want to upgrade from Standard to get to. So you can see that this doesn't tell the whole picture. When we say there's a lot more stuff like in workflow routings and things, it's really, there's a lot to it. So on the infrastructure side is PDM Standard and Professional run on different versions of SQL. The Standard Edition runs on Express Edition. Express can be limited on the amount of people, the amount of RAM it can address, the number of cores of CPU, and that kind of stuff. So I would say that some people, you know, when you start getting to 5, 10, 15 users or something, you might start noticing it's not as fast as it could be. However, you know, it's hard to say what that number is because it really depends on your company, your product, and how long, you know, how hard you're hitting the vault, how much data you use, how big your assemblies are, all that kind of stuff. But at some point, you know, SQL Standard Edition or Enterprise or whatever, anything higher than that is available in the PDM Professional. And there's a lot of benefits to having SQL Standard over Express. You can have maintenance plans and other things that are built into that software. Another couple things on here you'll see is the replicated archive server. This is a big reason people go to PDM Professional is we have multiple offices. So this is, if this is all hosted in one office and I work in the satellite office, I still have to pull all my data from that, you know, the other site A. And then we also have some web server options. So when, you know, so let's say I'm in site A here, this office is the home office. And I'm over here, or, you know, we have users in site C. So rather than having them have to pull from the PDM server, the archive data, we can have that replicated over to this site. So most of the time, they're pulling data locally. They're still talking to the main SQL server, but that data is very small. You know, those queries are very tiny. Whereas actually pulling a large assembly from another office, if you've ever done that or something like that, then you can tell that that's going to be a little bit slower, right? So what we can do is in the different sites, we can set up replication. I've seen people replicate even just across the street because the bandwidth between buildings is very small. The other thing that some of the other bullets here, and I'll take a look at a couple of these sort of quickly. Windows login. So you saw the tie-in that I did when I logged in. It asked me for my password, and I just had admin and with a blank password. But obviously, you'll have users' names. That's just an internal PDM system with PDM standard. With PDM Professional, you can actually link it to Active Directory or an LDAP type system. So it's a little more compliant. If you have very strict like FDA or other types of compliant things and they require single sign-on, those types of things throughout your Windows, whatever, then you might need the PDM Professional for that. Also, it's just a convenience. If it's the same login as my Windows, it's one less thing to remember every time, right? Email notifications. Inside of PDM Standard, I'll go to my notifications. I was kind of ignoring those, but there's a little inbox here that I can see documents have changed state, and it'll just tell me, this is just an older one, but it'll basically tell me the comment that people wrote in, which files changed, and all that. But this is only through a little internal notification system. So it's going to have a little pop-up down by the clock, but it's not going by email. So it's very likely to miss it. You're only going to see this if you're logged in and stuff like that. So that's another big reason you might want to go to PDM Professional. The advanced workflow, kind of touched on that on the other side, but you can have things like multiple approvers. So if in the workflow here, it only takes one person in this group called management to do it. But if I need two people from that group, or one person from management, one person from manufacturing, one person from QA, I can set that kind of stuff up inside of PDM Professional. Whereas here, the transitions we don't call that, they're not parallel transitions, they're single transitions. You can also have what's called automatic transitions in PDM Professional. So for example, if something meets a certain condition, so I can set conditions here, automatically shoot it through there. So I might have a condition that says if description is blank, automatically reject. I can also have multiple transitions to and from the same workflow, which are the same states in the workflow. The other big part is I can have multiple workflows. In PDM Standard, you're limited to one workflow and up to 10 states. There's 3 states in this one, so that might be okay right there. But if I wanted to separate the documents, this is a CAD workflow, but what if I just want to put in general documents like Word docs or something? I don't need to I could put them in the same CAD workflow and just leave them in work in progress or throw them in released, but they don't really need that. I might just need a vaulted state for that. Or if I want to manage ECO documents, for example, these are just, in my case, I'm just saying they're Excel files or something. I could have a workflow for those ECO Excel files or product documentation workflow. So if I have multiple processes that I need and multiple files that I'm planning on managing inside of PDM, PDM Pro is probably a better tool because it gives you more access to different workflows, different revision schemes. Remember too, I can only have up to 2 revision schemes for PDM Standard. So that maybe a prototype and a release revision scheme might be all I have available. Whereas in PDM Professional, I can have as many revision schemes and as many workflows and as many states and as many of those things that I want available in there. The other big thing that kind of, I'll say adds onto the workflow, but it's really kind of its own thing, is I can actually add a task in here. So let's say I need to create PDF of drawings whenever I release a file. So I could say execute a task. I've already built a task. It's called convert to PDF. And only for drawings. So what's going to happen here is not only is it going to increment it now, but it's also going to create a PDF for me as I run through this transition. So let's go back to our guy. I'll show you that really quick here. So I do want to put an asterisk on this. PDM Standard does have a PDF task. It's limited though. It only allows you to run it on the machine that the person's actually submitting it through. It only allows it to put inside the same folder as the file. Whereas I have a lot more expanded options with PDM on the convert task. I can not only convert to PDF, but I convert to STEP, IGES, Parasol, anything I can do a file save as inside of SOLIDWORKS. I'm just going to push this through. For time's sake, I'll just push that. Ignore that I didn't put in comments. Obviously, again, I can make those mandatory. So now I send this to review. Yes. And no notifications. Yeah, I know. And then I can say release this file. So when I release it, it's obviously going to go to C, since it was on B, but it's also going to write approve by again and all those fields. And then it's also going to create a PDF for me. So, and that'll, I forget the poll that it does. I think it's, every 30 seconds or a minute that the task host will look at the PDM and see that there's some jobs available. I can see here, you'll see SOLIDWORKS pop up here in a second, but I can see that this convert to PDF, this task list is actually there. Notice SOLIDWORKS is kind of opening in this little own window there. I'm actually not doing that. The cursor's, my machine looks like it's haunted there. But what's nice about PDM Professional is I can set up a machine that has SOLIDWORKS and PDM and everything, or a server or something, so I don't have to run this on my computer, have it there, because with PDM Standard, if computer's off and somebody pushes it through, they're not going to be able to create a task or a PDF. If I'm a non-SOLIDWORKS user, I can also have it do it. But I can also do advanced things like have it put it to outside folders. It doesn't just have to be inside the vault. I can have it go to like a network drive that's shared to other people. So when I look at this, I actually have it set up to put it in a folder called PDF inside here. Let's see, it's this one right here. So I have it naming it RevC, of course, Acrobat loves to, so now I can quickly see that I have, a PDF created automatically. And I could also have it create a step file, the assembly, or whatever else we need as part of our process. So again, those advanced tasks where you put it in different folders, where it has more options, has different file types, that's only available in PDM Pro. I could quickly show the web access, and we'll talk about dispatch and some of those. So if with PDM Professional and I set up IIS on the server, I can actually set up kind of a web portal. And if I choose to, open this up to the outside, I'm just running it locally on my system right now for this demonstration. But if I chose to, have this on the server, open up ports, I can get in as a web portal. Now, I wouldn't say this is a replacement for the client. It's not an add-in to SOLIDWORKS. So SOLIDWORKS users, if you're doing a lot of data, working in SOLIDWORKS 8 hours a day and doing that, you're going to want to have the client installed. But for maybe non-people or outside people that just need to upload some files or download some files, I can set up logins and permissions and all that for them. But you'll notice I have that same structure. If I go, let's go to my universal joint. Let's just click on this guy. It kind of gives me a preview here. If I click on this button, I can actually get an eDrawings preview. I actually think this is a pretty slick little interface for eDrawings, zoom in, zoom out. A lot of the buttons here that eDrawings and measure, all those types of things are in there. But then I also can see the data cards, the values that I put in the data cards, the bombs, the where used, the history, and so on. And again, if I need to upload files, I can actually check in files with structure. So if I have an assembly, I don't have to check in each file individually and stuff. I can download the files, all that kind of stuff. So the web interface is pretty nice. I'm just using Chrome here. But if you open this up to the outside and you're hosting a web page on the outside, obviously you might want security and SSL and stuff there, but you might be able to access some of this on your phone and other types of spots. Again, I wouldn't say it's a replacement for the client, but it's a great portal tool for you. Dispatch and API is also available. So when we start talking about connecting to other applications or automating some of the stuff in there, API, is the application programming interface and the toolkits. Those are available only in PDM Professional. So if you're going to want to link to other systems, that's probably something you're going to need. So if you want to link to your PLM system, your ERP system, those types of things, you're going to need like a connector built or a custom app. Even a lot of the partners out there that you'll see that have add-ins or partners with PDM, they will require PDM Professional because they need access to that API. So if that's your goal down the line to automate more, not just PDM and SOLIDWORKS, but company-wide, you're probably going to want Professional. The other is Dispatch is kind of like an internal programming language. So you can do a lot of things, like a lot of sort of bulk operations with Dispatch. For example, let's go to this universal joint one. If I wanted to, let's say, just have it create part numbers for this, I built a quick dispatch for the sake of this presentation that just says rename it with a general serial number. Serial number capability is also only available in PDM Pro. It's just a sequential serial number. It's not like a super smart system. We can make it pretty smart but essentially it's just a sequential serial number. But I just right click and I say rename all these files with that. It says it's completed, and you'll notice that the names of the files now all are kind of like a part numbering system instead of the descriptive names there. Yeah, and basically, I just had it pulling whatever the drawing number is here and creating it. So that's the kind of stuff that you can get out of PDM Professional. The other is branching and merging. I'll kind of just briefly talk about that, but I can branch this file out, and if I decide to, and it'll basically, it's almost in a sense making a copy of this assembly and whatever I choose to make a copy of, and so that I actually have a branch off of it, and then that can live as its own, or if I ever someday want to bring it back in. So for example, if a part's released and I maybe have some ideas, but I don't really have approval to do anything yet, I might branch out and say, work on it a little bit, and then say, hey, show my boss or show the manager or show whoever, look what I did. I think this is going to be, should be something we look at or something we do for this assembly. Or maybe it's a totally new design and they can go, yeah, let's do that. And then I have the option to merge that back in as the next version. So I'm not really changing the original in that case. There's a lot of other reasons you might use branching and merging, but that's, a big popular reason to get PDM Pro. Let's see, what did I miss here? Templates, yeah, I should show that one. I'll do that one really quick. In the projects, you notice I had kind of this project folder. So when you think of templates, PDM templates, they're not just SOLIDWORKS templates. You can take your SOLIDWORKS templates and convert them to PDM templates, but it's basically folders, files, anything. So if I want to always have, I don't want to give people access to this project folder to just create folders like this universal joint one. That's going to make a mess, right? I only want them to create a certain project folder that has these subfolders below it every time. So rather than having to create those folders each time for people, I can actually have a template that runs, and that's the way you do it. So in this case, I'm going to right click and say new project. And when I do a new project, it's going to pop up and ask me a few questions. I can pick the customer here. I can have some intelligence brought in here. You'll notice that when I pick grill type, stand-up LP gas, I have 480 as the first size on the list. But when I come to a different type of thing, maybe I have a different sizes. So I can actually build, kind of if-then or intelligence sort of statements in here. And this is, again, all part of this logic and things is all part of PDM Professional, this whole template thing. But when I click OK to that, it actually takes that information, it picked a new part, it made the P004 folder, it made all the subfolders below it. When I click on these, oops, not that one. When I click on this one, it's actually filled out some of that information, the project manager, the type, and all that for me is part of the properties of the data cards. The other is SOLIDWORKS. You can have templates of SOLIDWORKS stuff. So when you hit File New, you have your standard templates, and you probably have company templates. But you can convert some of those over to PDM templates. And what that means is, as soon as I do a File New, now it's asking me where do I want to put this, and I'll just again put it in the root level for now. So I'm creating this brand new part, it already knows to put it in there. It brings up the data card for me, and it already is assigning a serial number for me and filling out some of this information. So you can kind of convert your regular templates over to that and get some of this automation, get some of this stuff in there, and then I create the file and I can check it in, and I just have one for a part, but obviously assemblies, drawings, all those can have PDM templates created. You can also have things like templates for other stuff. So if I want to create, I have a template for like an ECO document. Again, I just have it just an Excel file, and it's creating a new ECO. It's at number 10 now, and I can fill in some information and choose to open file or create the file, whatever. And I can open this up in Excel. And you'll notice it actually filled out some of these fields. I have those linked, so these properties, and whether this is a Word doc or anything. PDM is very good about supporting Office because it's a very common thing. You'll notice with PDM Professional, I have add-ins to other applications, not just SOLIDWORKS. So I can do the check-in and check-out and change state and show the data cards, all that inside of Office. So PowerPoint, Word, Excel, whatever type documents. So, PDM Professional gives you more access to that type of stuff. I also have it creating the ECO in a specific folder. So I did the new ECO while I was in projects, but it put it over into this folder called ECO. So templates can really streamline what you want to do and create a repeatable process. And with those templates and all the additional stuff that you can do in the workflows, That's going to be a big part of PDM Professional, big reasons to upgrade. Just a lot more automation in PDM Professional. You think about all the time you spend on that, and it probably justifies the cost of PDM Professional, because obviously engineering time is the most expensive thing, more expensive than software, right? I'll touch on a couple things here, and then we'll wrap up. Licensing. So PDM standard, you probably saw in the other slide there, is available in SOLIDWORKS Professional or Premium, the CAD editor. So there's basically three types of licenses: CAD editor, contributors, and viewers. CAD editors is the top level. That has the add-ins to SOLIDWORKS. So if you're a SOLIDWORKS user, think you need a CAD editor. If you're a non-SOLIDWORKS user, but you still want the same level of permissions, like you want to be able to put documents in there, Word docs, other types of files, check in, check out, edit things, that's going to be a contributor. And then there's a third type called viewers, and viewers are sold in actually 5-packs. And those are the lowest level. They're viewers, they're read-only. So you can go into the vault, you can look at the files that you have access to see, you can print them, you can open them, you can do whatever, but it's all read-only. You can never change and put them back in or create another version. You can participate in the workflow though. So a viewer could potentially be an approver if all they need to do is look at it. If they need to make changes, then they would need to be a contributor or CAD editor. But if they just need to look at it and reject or approve, they could potentially be a viewer license for that. The last one on the list is the universal site license. That is sold in 25-packs. And that way, if you have enough users and you think you're getting close to that level of different mix of licenses, you might just go with what we call the universal site license and save a little bit of money, because it's basically a way to, you don't have to pick CAD editors or contributors or viewers. You just can have 25 of each of those basically in any combination you want. The license type, though, it is important to note that they are floating. So floating license type is a big thing, because it's based on concurrent users. So whoever's logged in, if we are out of licenses, somebody can log out and another person can log in. So you can put PDM on everybody's system at the company, but only a certain amount, up to the amount of licenses you have, can log in at any given time. And finally, before I get to questions, we've talked about PDM. Obviously, hopefully you saw some stuff you like. But how do we get started with it? It's just like SOLIDWORKS. If you buy SOLIDWORKS, just because you own the license doesn't mean you know how to use SOLIDWORKS, right? We do have tech support, obviously, to help with errors or issues. But if it's just like, hey, build my sheet metal part, that's not really tech support. Set up my PDM vault and implement it and train it, that's not really tech support. Typically, most of our companies are going to want to get some implementation services or some help getting it set up. Now, I think it's like anything else. You can go to YouTube and figure it out, but do you want to spend 2 or 3 months in headaches and all that figuring it out, or do you just want, us? We've done thousands of these. We have experts in every area. So, I encourage you, when you're looking at PDM, setting it up, reach out to us, discuss our implementation services. The implementations are full services. We'll help install it, configure it, set up the permissions, users, groups, make sure you roll it out to your team, get it installed on the clients as well, potentially do some training if you want that as addition. We also have migration services. So for example, SOLIDWORKS had a workgroup PDM product that was expired a few years ago. So I have migrated an unbelievable amount of workgroup situations into PDM Professional. But other types of stuff, just you might have a big directory of Windows files that you want some help migrating. So we can talk about helping that. Obviously I showed you can copy and paste, but sorting all that data, stamping revisions, getting it all up to speed, that may be some things you want some help with. Training, of course, we have classroom training, we have online training. Most of our training right now is online, as you can imagine, but there's all kinds of resources. We also have, not so much on the PDM side, but when it comes to training, make sure, if you haven't looked at our training page in a while, take a look, because we have a ton of self-paced courses, essentials, advanced, sheet metal, all those types that you can just take at your own leisure. We also have online ones offered every month, instructor-led ones. So if you don't like the self-paced, but you still want to have instructors, do that. And then finally, the last thing that I just want to bring up really quickly is we have hosting and administration services for PDM. So for example, if you don't want to hire a PDM admin, you maybe want us to set up the vault and then manage it. We can talk about contracting to actually manage your PDM vault. Because obviously hiring another person that's a PDM admin and managing that and dealing with the upgrades every year and all that kind of stuff can cost a lot more than just having us be your managed PDM admin. And we have obviously proven expertise on our staff that have been doing this since it came out in 2005. So hosting services too. So if you talk about hosting things in the cloud, we can also help set up and host your PDM environment. Keep that in mind. If you're even interested, it doesn't cost anything, obviously, to get a quote from us. So please reach out if any of this sounds good to you. Thank you for those that stuck around, and look forward to talking about PDM maybe in the future.